He was a very dapper Australian cricketer, and so he always used to wear a tie. So he had a nice ribbon tie in the appropriate colours.
This seems to me to be very much in counterpoint to your professional life, which is, as you know, a podcaster. You're there editing, you're writing, working, using screens a lot, I would imagine. So does it feel like a contrast when you're crafting?
The fundamental thing that I enjoy about it is the same, which is at the end there is something that didn't exist at the beginning. But yes, the acts of it are quite different. I like the fact that there's this physical engagement when I'm crafting with materials. But in both cases, I taught myself how to do things I didn't know how to do them. And there are these engineering problems in different forms in the podcasting and in the crafting. But it's a shame that the podcasting has ruined my crafting time. I think because who knows what dead men I could be making effigies of now if I...
But is it required that it be soft materials? I mean, is that the definition of craft, or could it involve metal or wood?
Yes, I absolutely think so.
You could have a bit of an old car as part of your crafting.
Wood can definitely be, for
yes,
sure.
I know wood can, but I'm trying to think about what materials you might exclude.
Where are the limits?
What this has got to do with Hygge, but anyway.
Does it involve tools? Is it to do with the tools?
You mean apart from our hands?
I think
apart from, soldering irons, for example.
I think it's small-scale manufacture. In answer to your question about materials, I'm wearing some earrings that I bought off Etsy, which is the website where handicrafters effectively sell their stuff, and they're made out of concrete.
Right.
So
they are fabulous.
I think concrete can count as craft, right?
For sure,
I haven't experimented with it yet.
So, Helen, I mean, this is all about creating something that is unique, it's individual, it's handmade, it's homemade, and presumably there is a kind of connection between craft and Hygge. I mean, can you see the appeal, Helen?
There's certainly a personalisation inherent in it. If you're talking about people's homes being so much more populated by IKEA products, then the crafted objects are the antithesis of that in a way. They're these unique objects. And that imprint of individuality. If someone has an object that is a one-off, even if I'd made 100 WG Greystools, they'd all probably vary a little from each other.
Trina, the Danish sort of perspective on Hygge that you've brought us so far seems to be very kind of social. As you say, it's egalitarian, it's inclusive. Is this idea of kind of handmade, homemade skill central to it as well?
Both yes and no. I don't think necessarily. It's more about actually creating that atmosphere. But it could be in the sense that I think Hygge leads to some kind of authenticity. That is also what people are seeking out, and I think that's one of the real reason why it's on the agenda now. Is the Danes being the happiest people on the planet, the Scandinavian welfare model everybody's looking at right now. I mean, the whole idea that we actually think that the world is on fire more or less out there, and there's so many things going on we don't understand, and people feel more anxious, and they're looking at other countries and see how are they figuring it out. And you can say about the Scandinavian countries, we have actually figured some things out, especially when it comes to equality, better balance between home and work, and things like that. And I think the Hygge ties into that.
Susie?
I suppose the thing that always impresses me from the outside is the fact that you've got a social contract that's about contribution and about engagement. What I wanted to know is, as a cook, is there competition in the cooking, or is it just relished and enjoyed, the individuality of your food prep?
Home cooking is a big thing still. Everyday home cooking. I'm not only talking about, people going out on Saturday and shop for 4 hours and cook for 6 hours. I'm talking about the daily meal.
And Trina, you advocate kind of cooking communally together, right?
Yes.
You're a big advocate of that.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I believe it brings you together. It starts a conversation about all the important things in life. And even if you can't speak the same language, you can always cook together.
And this collective element that you're describing, do you think that's missing from the kind of lifestyle press version of Hygge that we're getting over here? Rachel, you kind of think we're missing some elements of it.
I guess what I'm concerned about, in a way, is, books have been written about how IKEA has become emblematic of the modern, and it's that very conscious branding and appropriating of artefacts without any of the history, the cultural value, and the idea of the symbolic meaning behind it, that people go out and get the books and kind of maybe talk about them. I actually saw there were some slippers being advertised as Huglik for 60 quid, which is the antithesis
Trina,
of what
be
you're
honest,
talking
how much
about.
did your slippers cost?
I still wear the socks that my grandmother knitted for me.
Now that's serious hooker,
Yes, that's
right?
serious hooker.
That's doing
Yeah.
it right. Okay, the £60 slipper's not so much for you.
IKEA store is really weird. I just want to say that that's the only place where I never ever go with my husband, because we would have a divorce. I mean, I have a very, very paradoxically kind of relationship with IKEA, because I was brought up with it, and I don't get the whole idea of it. Sorry.
Is it
In
all the
whole world.
capitals? It can feel quite shouty to me. Or everything's in capitals. It's like, whoa, okay, settle
I do
down.
have to say that I knew that my first marriage had come to an end when we were ordering a wardrobe in Bristol IKEA.
I
It's a
think
great
the
book title.
Rachel,
Yes.
it is. It's also, it feels like the beginning of a film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe not Disney, but
But definitely with a happy ending at the end. I mean, Rachel, let's talk a bit then about the meaning of home, because it's obviously culturally and historically specific. We often describe home as a sanctuary, but apparently that's a relatively modern idea. When does that kind of idea come in?
the conscious creation of home as sanctuary came about towards the end of the 18th century. Really, it's tied up with industrialisation, profit, Protestant spirit of capitalism.
Enterprise.
That somehow there had to be an other to that. And that was consciously created, the angel of the hearth, by white Anglo-Saxon Protestant men with, the woman at home, and her duty was to look after her family and to exhibit virtue, purity, piety and domesticity.
Not doing very well on any of those. I'm just that checklist. Fail. So before that, you're saying that there wasn't this kind of separation between the private sphere and the public sphere in the same way, this kind of gendered separation.
The change wasn't sudden, and obviously industrialisation happened at different times in different places. But if you think about the early modern era, the workshop could be in the back of the house, it could be in the cellar, you might have the loft above, for the silk
1700s,
weaving.
1800s?
Yeah, and then what happened was as, manufacturing stopped being craft, really, and became industry, you start to have this split. And whereas previously everything had been tangled together, and as a woman you were in charge of the house and household management, but that was actually quite a complex business, that gradually, there's this move out to the suburbs, and your man has kind of fled to the city to have this quite masculine existence, and then comes home at night to the little woman who's made this sanctuary of religious, virtuous, domestic perfection.
So that's a kind of archetype from a kind of 20th century archetype. Where are we at now, and how are things changing?
It's interesting to get back to what Susie was talking about, that what happened with the First and, in particular, the Second World Wars was women were going out to work also for a number of reasons, none of which are absolutely certain. Family size had shrunk, so people were just having two. It was respectable to have two children rather than sort of acres of them spreading up into the attics and down to the cellars. And then after the Second World War, particularly in North America and in Britain, this idea of having the wife at home looking after her man became all entangled with patriotism. And so these women suddenly found themselves back at home in the suburbs, probably necking Valium when that came along.
You could smell it off them. I mean,
Yes,
not
Susie.
quite.
Really?
You could smell the farmer on the women.
So, Susie, you're talking about what I think Betty Friedan referred to as the problem with no name, which is the phrase from the
Which
feminine
was
mystique.
competing at the same time with keeping up with the Joneses in Britain. So you've got attempts to make the home, this sanctuary, be something that's as competitive as the marketplace. And
So it's a kind of parallel.
so that women themselves became involved in a game of competition. It's really quite interesting.
A kind of game of yes, they moved in tandem, didn't they? The production in the workplace and what we're seeing, you know, the new consumerism.
Right. So once you're
once
you're out of the munitions factories, you know, give us back our wives and sweethearts, you then have to recognise that they